Hey, I'm back. Welcome back. Not too long ago, I released a video about Log Horizon that analyzed the Round Table Alliance and categorized it by the defining features of its leadership structure and methods of civil participation. Using the most broad terminology, I claimed that the Round Table Alliance was a democratic oligarchy, though I'll admit a strong argument could be made in opposition against that. But I'm not here today to talk about Log Horizon. I was just summarizing what political topics were discussed previously because I'd like to build off of those to discuss more intricate political subsystems that exist or don't exist in other fictitious systems of government. In this particular video, our subject of analysis will be the highly acclaimed Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood's Government of a Mistress, otherwise known as Cerntal Command. I'll take a moment to note that this video was prompted by a viewer that posted on the Reddit thread of this video. I'd like to thank them and encourage others to do the same if you have curiosities you want me to make videos on. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Much like the previous video, we can't have a productive discussion regarding politics until we agree on the fundamental definitions of the topics we wish to discuss. Without clear points of reference, you'd be watching the anime aimlessly with no clear intent of analysis, almost as if you were watching it for the sole purpose of having fun, and we can't have that now, can we? So, I'll outline the topics here. The first topic I'd like to discuss is the concept of a unitary state versus a federal state. In its most simple definition, this describes the centralization of national government or the decentralization of regional governments. An example of a decentralized federal state could include Canada. Canada has 10 provinces, each governed by their respective provincial government, and 3 territories which are governed by, you guessed it, their respective territorial governments. All of these regional governments share responsibility with the federal government, and each level of government has powers that the other does not. These are the basics of a federal state system of governance, where the distribution of power is separated by scale and distance. On the other hand, we have a unitary system of government, where there is no distribution of power and the highest level of government holds the ultimate ability to direct and control any legal, economic, or social branch of their nation. Such is the case with North Korea. I'm kidding, of course, I'm obviously talking about China. The second important topic I wanted to discuss was the concept of bicameralism and unicameralism. If you've never heard of these terms before, I can assure you I'm not poorly describing a camel, though I can understand your confusion, and let's all be honest, it would have been a much better name. Instead, bicameralism refers to another division of power, this one occurring within the government itself. Using Canada again as an example, the federal legislature of Canada is composed primarily in 2 parts, the lower house, known as the House of Commons, and the upper house, known as the Senate. Neither one nor the other is explicitly more important or more powerful than the other, and in fact bills can only be passed once they get the approval from both houses, meaning they have to work together. The main difference between the 2 houses are how they receive their positions and what their positions are there to represent. Seats in the House of Commons are publicly elected positions, thereby meaning they are accountable to the people of the regions they represent. And seats in the Senate are appointed positions by the Prime Minister. In theory, this means the primary objective of the House of Commons in Parliament is to represent the people of Canada, while the Senate safeguards the interest of the Canadian government. This division of power serves as the primary check and balance of both the executive and legislative branches of government. Contrast this bicameral system to a unicameral system where legislature is not divided into multiple bodies and instead a single legislative body proposes, debates, and votes amongst themselves in the process of making laws. Proponents of unicameralism will argue that their system is simpler and more efficient because there is no possibility of gridlock between 2 houses of legislature that cannot agree nor compromise. Such is the case of Korea. No, the other one. Finally, the last topic I wanted to discuss was the concept of a parliamentary republic and that of a constitutional monarchy. While these terms may seem overly complicated, what it really boils down to is the separation of the head of state and the head of government, or their lack thereof. In a constitutional monarchy, the head of state and the head of government are two separate individuals. Calling upon Canada once more as an example, the Canadian head of government is the publicly elected Prime Minister, the ever photogenic, brown-faced Justin Trudeau. The head of state, however, is Queen Elizabeth II, the monarch of the United Kingdoms. This is a nuance I simplified earlier, but will clarify now. Canada's parliament is technically constructed in 3 parts, not 2. These 3 parliamentary bodies are the House of Commons, the Senate, and the Monarch, with the latter serving almost purely as a ceremonial role, acting only with the guidance of the other 2 houses. Seats in the Senate are in fact not appointed directly by the Prime Minister, but are instead appointed by the Governor General, representing the Queen by the advice of the Prime Minister, which the Governor General has never and will never contradict. Both in theory and in practice, this step is an unnecessary waste of time that only serves as a relic of Canada's colonial past. Similarly, bills that receive approval from both the House of Commons and the Senate require approval from the monarch in the final step of the legislative process, known as royal assent, which the Queen has never withheld. Contrast this with a parliamentary republic such as the United States of America, where the publicly elected president is both the head of government and the head of state. So, to summarize, the 3 things to keep an eye out for while watching this anime are unitary states versus federal states, bicameral legislature versus unicameral legislature, and constitutional monarchies versus parliamentary republics. Though, put in other words, try and understand the centralization of government power, or lack thereof, the division of power between legislative bodies, or lack thereof, and the difference in the position of head of government and head of state, or lack thereof. In the anime world of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, a mistress is the country that serves as the principal setting for the majority of its plot. Originating in the mid-15th century, it was a small nation bound for conquest. It invaded and integrated its neighboring countries. With its military nature, it stands to reason that the government it formed is a military state, known in the anime as Cerntal Command. This notion that the nation of a mistress champions a military state is reinforced by the ranking structure of their military, where the lowest rank position is that of the military police, accountable to the state military. This is in contrast to a civilian police force, separate from the military, accountable to the public. Another feature of note is the division of administrative regions in the government, illustrated by this map. This roughly outlines the original territories of a mistress before their campaigns of conquest seen in the central area, and expanded territories after conquest in the north, east, south, and west areas. Finally, an important note that I could not find in the anime, but appears quite explicitly in the wiki, is the idea that a mistress is governed as a parliamentary republic. There is no citation in the wiki, so it's difficult to verify, but if you know of any evidence to justify this claim, please let me know in the comments, because I would be greatly interested in knowing where and when in what episode this is mentioned. So let's begin with the first question. Is Cerntal Command a unitary state or a federal state? As the name suggests, and so obviously gives away, Cerntal Command is a highly centralized form of government. While this map might imply the existence of regional governments, the north, east, south, and west areas are administrative zones, each answering exclusively to the one same government, being Cerntal Command. This rules out any possibility for the existence of a federal system. Therefore, Cerntal Command is a unitary state. The second question we have to ask: is Cerntal Command a bicameral or unicameral system? While the wiki might suggest that the government of a mistress operates under a parliamentary republic, alluding to the idea that there is some division of power between the executive and legislative branches of government, it in fact does not matter. Central Command is a military state. As such, both executive and legislative powers reside in the head of government, otherwise known as the Commander-in-Chief of the state military, otherwise known as Führer President King Bradley. What this means in practice is that if the head of government makes an executive decision, such as going to war, they do not require approval from a secondary parliamentary body, because they are the only parliamentary body. Central Command is therefore a unicameral system, and if this is beginning to sound like an authoritarian dictatorship, that's because it is. Though do keep in mind that not all unicameral systems are authoritarian dictatorships, however, all authoritarian dictatorships are unicameral systems. Finally, is Central Command a parliamentary republic or a constitutional monarchy? For the nation of Mistress, the head of government is also the head of state. As the wiki states, this would make it a parliamentary republic. However, if you didn't know any better, you might be inclined to use the label of a constitutional monarchy, because the head of government is the head of state, and the head of state is King Bradley. Therefore, the head of state is a monarch. However, this would be wrong. As I was very disappointed to learn, King Bradley is in fact not a king. King is his first name, meaning the wiki is correct in claiming that Central Command is a parliamentary republic. So, to summarize, Central Command is a unitary military state that operates a parliamentary republic with a unicameral legislative system. But for the sake of brevity, people don't usually title governments by every feature they have. It's much more natural to say Central Command is a military state that happens to contain these listed features. Much like the last video, I'm sure this video is already very long, so I'm not going to cover the other government entities in the anime, but just to name them off, there is the Kingdom of Qing and the ancient country of Xerxes. Upon your own discretion, analyze these governments with your newfound knowledge of political subsystems. I hope you learned something useful from this video, and if you didn't, it doesn't matter, because these have been things that don't matter.